Hello, 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 Tampa Bay listeners and beyond. You've got Everything PEO, Money Talk 1010 a.m. I'm Evan Collard.
I'm Lionel Francis.
Man, I am just so excited. We are just a few weeks away from that time change. I am just looking for the day where I don't start my day in the dark at work and end my day in the dark at work.
Is this supposed to be the last change? I think they talked about it. It's supposed to be the last change now.
Forever?
Forever.
Nah.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds like a myth to me. They've been saying that since the 80s.
It's the last change. That's what they're saying.
Well, knock on wood for that. I would certainly appreciate it. It's a little easier to even just getting your exercise in or walking the dogs at night. I was talking to one of my sales reps up in the Panhandle yesterday. It gets dark at 5:11 up there in the Tallahassee, Pensacola area. I can't even imagine that. I mean, it's like 6:30 for us, and even that's pretty brutal.
Oh, yeah.
But just a few short weeks away. But like anything, got to turn the page. The show must go on every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Everything PEO, Money Talk 1010 a.m. And we've got a doozy for you today. We've got, well, let's just call her what she is, the PEO lady.
All right.
In the building, Blanca Abbud.
Yes.
11 years in the PEO business, VP of Sales for Engage PEO. A really, let's just call it what it is, a PEO juggernaut.
Yep.
And we're
like
glad to
that.
have you.
Thank you guys so much. It's been an adventure of a day just to get here. So thank you guys for having me. I'm excited.
You've
Is
really
she really-
spanned the globe today.
Yeah.
I really did. I hit from Dallas to Atlanta to Miami, Homestead, Florida City, Tampa, and now in St. Petersburg, all in one day.
Wow.
I know.
I was talking to you last night at 8:30, and our fingers were crossed. Hopefully the plane was going to make its time, and it did, so we're in good shape.
We're glad you're here.
Just a normal day for the PEO lady.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I used to do a little bit of travel, and I had about a 2.5 year span where I did about 100,000 miles on the car. That's simmered down a little bit, 15 years later, and the agency being where it is, but it never gets old, and that's kind of the thrill of the hunt for me. I'll always enjoy that part of it. 20 years in the business. I'm not going to say I'm bored with it. I love the PEO business. I go to work with a smile every single day, but really that thrill, what I love the most is making that sale. And so it was just kind of neat to have you in town, right?
Thank you.
Dedicating some time for us and, checking a box. So good for you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. It was a really good morning. I was actually here to onboard a new client, and they were so happy. The meetings went great. Everything actually today was just really on cue, just perfect from getting here to the radio show. So thank you, guys. It's been amazing.
Awesome. Coming from Texas to Miami to close a deal.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about.
That is what it's all about.
Face-to-face and making sure you're in there to get them on board and answer all the questions they have. PEO.
Well, she understands.
Yeah,
in person wins the race, and
every
that's what
time.
it does. I try and tell my reps that all the time. I mean, it's a phone, fax, FedEx kind of business these days. But you know what? If you really want to lock it down, in person wins the race. So good for you.
It keeps you sharp as well. Always keeps you sharp.
Well, we always start the show out by saying a quick thank you to last week's guest, and you may know David Brodsky, Blanca. She, chief underwriter, Sons Insurance. I know Sons is one of your carriers, right?
Correct.
Correct me if
Yes.
I'm wrong. So it was kind of neat. He flew in from New York last week. You flew in from Texas this week. I guess the show's finally getting some traction. But this line, that he dropped on us last week, that he's not in the declination business, but he's in the recommendation business. I just love that. I think too many underwriters in this era are really almost taught to, here's why we want to decline the business versus here's why we should take that hard look and take the business. And it really feels like he's put his arms around that. He's a lifelong underwriter, his own words, but to keep that mindset as he's moved up the ranks and now is essentially running the underwriting department for that carrier. One of my favorite carriers, certainly one of the better ones in the PEO space, but that thing's been bouncing around in my head all week like marbles.
Yeah. Very impressive when he came in here, and I understand the reason why he's the chief underwriter at Sons. With everything we spoke about and we were on the show, all the knowledge that he has, especially when it comes to the claims and how to handle certain claims and not denying every claim that comes through and just going through each single one of them and getting a story out of them before you say, hey, I'm not going to write this. Let's look at the whole picture, not just what this one incident, Let's see the whole picture. Let's see the last 5 years, 6 years. Let's tell a story and see if we could bring that client on board.
Yeah.
Again, a company that's not inside a box, a carrier that's not inside the box, that could do pretty much anything they want, and it's very easy when you have that capability of not, being in a certain box where you could do anything you want. So
Yeah.
it was cool. It was cool.
Too many carriers have that same underwriting prowess, and I know we've got a lot to go through today, so we'll move on. But like always, turning the page. We want to hear from you today, folks. 888-404-1010. That's 888-404-1010. Topic of the day, right? And we usually have a segment. I know you've seen the show, Blanca, where we, save of the week, and we kind of highlight a moment. We do that starting out segment 2 and everything relevant, where we kind of hit this week's, bright moment in the space. We're going to condense all that into this first segment so we can really spend a lot of time with you. But we had a GC come in the office this week, and I'm curious to see how this works in Texas. I know you're a specialist in that market, but in Florida, we have the workers' comp exemptions. And this general contractor, they sub out nearly 100% of their work. She had walked in the office and said, hey, I use a lot of subs, and they have an exemption, right? Every once in a while, they'll bring a helper with them, and that helper doesn't have an exemption. So I know I'm exposed now, and so I make that helper go to a day labor company, at least get his helper covered. And it was like bombs dropping in my head, literally. And I said, well, wait a minute. What about the exempt sub? Right. And that's the biggest confusion in Florida, is understanding that the workers' comp exemption doesn't remove you from liability. It doesn't do anything really except police the mandate to buy coverage for that sub themselves. And so when I had kind of, uncovered this a little bit, ultimately it turned into, 2 or 3 people subbing out 100% of work to over 10 employees now, because every single one of our subs holds an exemption, and almost every single one of them have a helper or two. And by the end of this, it was, we need to cover them all the right way. So kudos to that business owner to finally take those steps in 2023. In Florida, a corporation, you're allowed to hold up to 3 exemptions. The caveat to that, they must be an owner in the business. They must hold at least 10% ownership in that business. But too often, the general contractor will think, okay, if they hold an exemption, that exempts their right to sue me if they get hurt. It does not exempt the liability at all. How does that work in the Texas market? Do you have something similar?
So I was actually talking to Lionel before the show. So Texas market is completely different, guys, being that we are still the only state in the U.S. does not require workers' compensation, even above 50. So it is not.
I thought at 50 and up you had there was a mandate.
That's for health insurance. So 50 and up, yes, they are required by ACA compliance to have health insurance and employee benefits. And that's kind of when the employees will start calling, right when they get about 45, borderline 50. But for workers' compensation, we're still, I always say we're the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
So
no pun intended.
Really?
No, I told her I went out there and stayed a whole week.
That is true.
Trying to talk to brokers and agents and trying to convince them to do workers' comp. And I just told her, I said, I see why they do it big in Texas. I mean, I walked into places that I couldn't believe. 18-karat gold stair rails, elevators that talk to you when you walk inside. I said, okay, now I get why they don't need workers' comp. They just do it on their own.
So let's break that down. There is no mandate to buy at any size point. And what happens if an employee gets injured?
So they self-insure.
Wow. 100%.
100%. Unless and I was actually thinking about that. They used to have owner occupational policies, but even then I haven't came across one of those in years. Yeah. So I don't even think that's owner occ is even still a thing. Nope. They self-insure. And what ends up happening is that they'll self-insure themselves for so many years until they actually get a big claim that really does hurt them. And then they're like, oh, maybe I should get workers' compensation. It just happened a couple weeks ago. And then they realize the benefit of actually carrying the insurance. But I don't think that Texas business owners are still educated on that and really what the benefit is, unless they're in a very high risk industry where they're like, okay, I wouldn't be a smart business owner and not have workers' comp, right?
In Florida, especially, no matter what the mindset is of the actual business owner, if they want to walk that plank and go out there exposed, that's fine. But the folks that they're doing work for, the people putting that sub or that general contractor on the job, aren't they worried about the liability of that having to run uphill? I mean, there's no one, an injured worker, there's no one below the injured worker to pursue these benefits from.
Right.
And so if the business owner is not, whatever, savvy with their money or haven't put proper funds away and can't pay the claim, doesn't it go uphill to the next person that put them on the job?
So good question. So we're still doing a lot of educating just on the business owners themselves to require certificates of insurance on their subs and having them on file.
Wow.
I mean, that's how much education we have to address, and underwriting will actually ask those questions before approvals are given, if COIs are kept on file for their subs. And most of the time, I will tell you, they're not. Yeah, but I know it's crazy.
This feels
Trust me,
like
it blows my mind too every time.
like the Industrial Revolution is back. I mean, this stuff started in the late 1800s, and they knew back then you needed to have workers' comp. If you're going to give right direction and control, put these folks on the job, there's a certain liability that comes with that. I'm just dumbfounded that even though the state may have that set of rules or compliant, however you want to call it, the statute, that the general contractor, then the person or the municipality, at some point, someone has to take care of this injured worker.
We find it difficult in Texas sometimes to write the coverage because of the claims. Some of the claims, they could come back after 2 years that we've seen and put in a claim saying, well, I got injured on the job about 2 years ago, but I didn't say anything. And the claim would get picked up.
Really?
Yeah, we saw that a few times.
What's the statute of limitation on that?
We're looking at the Texas Pro right now.
I don't even. Yeah. I have not heard of any. I mean, in Texas, I've even heard of business owners actually representing themselves on a workers' comp claim.
Right.
Like literally going to court themselves and educating themselves and winning. And winning. So those are the kind of stories I hear on a daily basis. Wow. Obviously, we have the state fund, which is Texas Mutual, which covers a lot of the high risk businesses and industries in Texas. But a lot of people are still taking that risk. For sure.
And we have that as well, the Florida JUA, right, Joint Underwriter Association, and that's there for if and when there's a moment where the insured cannot find coverage. Of course, the state has to swoop in and at least provide them that opportunity, but it's a last resort. It comes at oftentimes 2 to 3x of premium. How does that work there? Is the Texas market competitive?
No, so it is way above premium, but the way that the Texas State Fund works is that they actually participate in a dividend program. So if your claims are low and you have a low modifier, they will actually pay you back at the end of the year a certain amount of the dividend.
Oh, so it's not like
it's like you're paying high up front, but at the end of the year, if your modifier is low or you don't have any claims, you actually get a refund check.
Is it each company treated individually?
Individually.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So,
individually.
Okay.
So some people will not want to leave Texas Mutual because they're like, oh my gosh, I've had him forever. My dividend is so high. And I'm like, but you're overpaying the whole year. You're just getting your own money back. Like, they don't even understand that concept. So it's hard to.
I've got executive producer buzzing in my ear saying that good old Google has bailed us out. In Texas, the statute is 1 year.
Is it? Okay.
And so, like,
what's the statute? Yeah.
I mean, like Lionel's saying, and I'm sure you're giving your experience from your own PEO, right? Lionel, Southeast, Lion Insurance, A-rated carrier. How many states are you into these days? I mean, I know you're approaching nearly 20 states, right? With Lion,
we're around 28 to 29 states right now.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, it sometimes boils down to the carrier, right? And if we kind of how we were talking about earlier, if you paint that Picasso and lay out the red tape, here's what happened, here's how it went down. Oftentimes it's carrier discretion. Now they can fall back on the statute and say, no, that's a hard red line. It's an instant denial. But they attorney up in Florida, and they win this battle an awful lot. I mean, it's a whole it's a whole nother industry, and I hate to use the F word on here, but fraud is rampant in almost every state. They always say, right, California, Texas, Florida, 3 most fraudulent states in America, and New York is a very close fourth. Knowing that, it just shocks me that there's no mandate to enforce. In Florida, and not every state has this. In fact, there's very few states, but they have a whole department of workers' comp inspectors, right, through the municipalities that are literally driving around to the job sites. And if they're with a PEO and they say, oh, I'm using Southeast for coverage, great, let me see your employee roster. Okay, you've got 15 guys on the job. You've only got 12 guys on your roster. Boom, shut down, red tag, right? And then that's a whole nother journey. Fine starts by the day in that scenario. Yeah. And oftentimes it spirals into other things, right? If you're 1099ing them, oftentimes now the state gets to pull in. All of a sudden you're getting a SUTA audit. I, it's big business here in Florida, and it sounds like it would be for just rampant in Texas for the taking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's our job as a consultant to go into the business and do a thorough evaluation and identify those things and educate the business owner on those items. Because again, I deal with business owners that have been operating business the same exact way for 20, 30 years. And so they don't understand that there's a better way that they can actually reduce their risk or liability. They don't understand. So I do a lot of educating on the front end. And so I'm dealing with companies that have been in-house their whole times, uninsured for workers' comp. Trust me, when I submit the deals to underwriting, my underwriters are like, what is this? Like, they don't understand. I'm like, remember, I'm in Texas, guys. Like, I'm in Texas. It's completely different. So,
yeah. And I know we were talking before the break a little bit where Lionel and I are very much distress comp specialists. You're more on the benefit side. And
Yep.
because that conversation almost has to start there and you educate them down to here's why you should have comp.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like a no-brainer to me. Well, we've got plenty more coming back with Blanca Abbud after the break. PEO's biggest myths, Engage, how they're setting themselves apart. Stay tuned.
Well, we're back, everyone, here with Blanca from Engage PEO, the PEO lady. Everyone, stay tuned. We got more information coming in to you right now, 888-404-1010. Give us a call if you have any questions. Blanca, real quick, I know we're going to go into something real quick, but let's talk about how did you get into the PEO industry in the first place?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting story. I was a business banker before the PEO industry, and I was kind of just tired of banking. I've been in banking since '08, and obviously the crash, so many different changes there. And I kind of put the feelers out there to get just to get a new opportunity. I ended up interviewing, got the job, and I think for the first good 6 months, I had really no idea what I was doing, what I was actually selling, because it takes time, to grasp the concept of what we do. And it really just hit me. I ended up really finding my passion, which was ultimately helping companies and helping business owners and their employees. And when I started realizing how much of what we do helps not only conceptually with the businesses, but just expanding and growth and the overall community, I really started just developing my passion. And then probably 4 years into it, I started branding the PEO lady and doing video content when really nobody had done any type of video content in the PEO space. I spent a lot of time really educating, which I still do to this day. I try to put that video content out there, more of an educational approach, and really showcasing maybe what it is that we do, or maybe success stories of companies that have had, severe challenges in their business, and how we've been able to help those companies and now seeing them thriving and expanding and growing. So I've got national attention on some of the video content that I've been doing, and I've been consistently doing it for so many years now that it really makes me happy to be now in this space and be recognized.
You're being a little modest right now. You have some publications right now, top 40, top 50.
Yes.
I mean, you've been busy.
Yes,
You've
been
real
really
busy.
Thank you.
No,
Yes.
You've hit the nail on the head, though. It's tough. Like any industry, this is a 90% failure rate industry. Oftentimes, to get your bearings in the first 6 months you're well ahead of the curve, really. I mean, restaurants have a 5-year honeymoon period. I would say that easily the same in this space. And it's usually the money lag, right? Everything you do today, you don't feel from a monetary standpoint for 60 to 90 days due to the trickle and everything's in the rear so far. But my producers had thrown a article in front of us today from Harvard Business Review, and it just seems so fitting since we had the PEO lady in studio today. I was talking about how successful women sustain their career momentum and really all that takes: focus, drive, constant thirst for knowledge, having a real agile mindset, and most importantly, being a quick learner, right? And so we call the show Everything PEO, but it's really more like anything entrepreneur, right? And even though you may be internally with Engage PEO, you've kind of set yourself on this path, like you said, that no one else has been down. I'd love to hear, kind of your 2 cents on how you've been able to be on the forefront of all that.
Yeah, I would definitely say education and knowledge. So I really spend a lot of time understanding business operations. Obviously, I have my master's degree in business administration, but also in healthcare administration, because that's really is my passion. Employee benefits and really becoming a specialist in that area where there is a lot of people, like I've even talked to you about it, where really don't know about employee benefits and how to create strategies, how to differentiate themselves when it comes to benefits. So that's actually been one of my specialties, and really just diving deep into that. But overall, just knowledge on the industry. And I learned Lean Six Sigma. I have different strategies, books, methodologies. I've tried to really know the ins and outs of how to operate. And I've kind of seen it all. Like, I've seen some very complex cases, like cases that like nobody wants. And I'm just like, give it to me. Like, that's how you learn, right? You get those cases that they're just like a mess, and you go in there and you just clean them up. And then you just start learning, like, okay, I got this. I got this. So
Yeah.
I got several clients in multi-states, different, all over the industries. But like I was telling you earlier, I get those cases like nobody wants. Like, all Spanish speaking, don't really use the computer, never had benefits, never had comp. Like, so it's those complicated cases that really have taught me the ins and outs of PEO and how I can help other clients and other business owners, right? And then helping that one person, then they refer me to somebody else, and it kind of just goes down. Like, you really got to talk to this person. She really helped my business. So that's really how it's been going for me lately.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Lyle. I know you're going to
Go
jump
ahead,
in.
go ahead.
Even when you're branding, in marketing in a different way, and finding that traction at some point, like most of sales, it always boils down to they're going to buy if they like you and they trust you, right? And so doing that good job when no one else would. I know we get our business a little differently, but co-founder Eric Checarellis and I, PEO advisors, all we do is partner with PNC agents all over the country. Right? And so almost all of that business we get is that one-off business, right? If there's a .70 mod, they haven't had, claims in 10 years, they can get a standard market coverage anywhere, right? And so for whatever reason, whether it's gaps or multi-state or claims or frequency, severity, whatever that moment is that they can no longer write it, they either want to discard it or kick it over to us. And so we've really had to embrace that one-off model. For whatever reason, someone doesn't want to work it. And that's that golden goose for us. That's where truly we thrive. Well, you're listening to Everything PEO today. 888-404-1010. We would love to hear from you. We've got Blanca Abbud, the PEO lady, in studio. Lots more to get to. Go ahead, Lionel.
Blanca, again, let's go back. San Antonio Business Journal 2018, top 40, under top 40. Texas, top 50 women to watch. And you're VP of sales right now.
Yes.
That's impressive.
Thank you.
I mean, you've been, like I said, you've been staying busy and doing things. And I think what you just said, communication and be able to tell the story and keeping an open mind when you're talking to people, I think is huge. Keeping your mouth shut and waiting to hear what their needs are, I think is the biggest thing. And I think sometimes in sales, a lot of people miss that part. Just listening to see what they need and giving them what they need so they could go ahead and function and move forward. I think it's huge.
I think
Big
once you
part of
give them
sales, right?
what they need, they actually get surprised. They're like, wait a minute, they actually listened
This
to
is
me.
yeah.
They actually put together a custom solution for my needs. Like, wow. But yeah, it's as simple as that, and as complicated as being a little bit more detailed orientated and really looking deep and doing a thorough evaluation in a business. But those accomplishments, they are significant and they mean a lot, but it's just being consistent and really always staying in front of the client, being responsive, providing that service, being able to have those answers when the clients need them the most, and just really building the relationships overall. I have clients for over 10 years now, guys, and it's just long-term relationships that I've been able to build. So I'm really blessed in that way.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well, we have a caller, Blanca. Let's see who's on the phone.
Okay.
You're on with Everything PEO.
Hey, guys. Blanca, so what would be your number one piece of advice that you could offer to anyone considering entering the PEO space, or a piece of advice that would lend to like the leadership component within the PEO space?
Oh, that's easy for sure. I would say
easy, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought about that question a lot. So I would say don't try to learn everything. Go and try to actually work cases, and trying to work through the cases is how you're going to learn the most. I see people that will try to learn the ins and outs of PEO, and they end up getting lost in the weeds, and they never actually get in front of a client because they're reading every single PEO literature material instead of actually getting in front of and speaking with people and working through the cases. That's really how you're going to learn. First piece of advice. Second, it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be a slow, gradual process. People think they're going to get in the industry and they're going to hit it big right away, and that's not going to happen. It takes time to build your book. It takes time to build your reputation. And so it's not going to be quick. It's not going to be overnight. So patience and just get out there and get in front of people.
I love that
Great
answer.
question.
I think there's this old video that Mark Cuban had spit out many years ago when he had made his first billion, but it was talking about how businesses too often get lost in R&D and branding and marketing, but there is no business without clients. And that was
Right.
such a parallel line
Yeah.
right there that you just said. I mean, that hits home. And like anything, and oftentimes I think, kind of why PEO Advisors partners with these agents is because workers' comp is the line they like the least. Right. And it just became a natural fit. They can't, whether they're homeowner specialists or general liability, commercial auto, you can't be a specialist on every line of insurance.
For sure.
And so the one they want to discard is the one that fits in this box the best. And it really just kind of took traction. And, we started the agency in 2010 and, have had great growth year after year. And largely it's because that one-off business, they don't want to, and we'll dive in. We have a sales rep literally getting up at 6 a.m. and driving 3 hours tomorrow morning to do a harvester enrollment at the farm with an interpreter, paper wraps and clipboards. Let's go. And when we ran it by the agent to say, hey, this is what it's going to take to get this done, initially the agent's response was, really? Wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
You want me to go to the farm?
I got to do what?
Should I wear a suit? And
Yeah.
it was almost like that was the first time they went down that path.
Yeah.
And it's a different onboarding. I get it. PEO, employee packet, service agreement, where, in that everyday world, they're binding a comp policy. You sign a binder, you collect a down payment, you're good. So it is a different, undertaking, but the thought process of, rolling up the sleeves and getting in there,
Yeah.
whatever it takes, it's
Most
too
peop-
rare these days.
Yeah, most people are not willing to do the work that it takes. And I guess maybe I make it look easy on social media, but when people actually write with me or I have my assistant write with me, they're like, oh, crap. They're like, this is what you do? And I'm like, yeah, this is. And being a road warrior, I mean, I cover Texas. So I am frequently on the road and I'm in the backcountry. I'm literally seeing cattle farms. I'm in places where really most people don't go and to sell PEO. So you got to roll up your sleeves and do the work. So that's,
I think that's why we are so lucky because of how long we've been in the business. Because I remember the time where we were cold calling, and I tell Evan all the time, I miss that part. Because
one of the few.
One of the few. I miss that part because it
You're the
always
only one.
keeps you sharp.
Yeah,
It keeps you
it does.
sharp. So when you go into a client, into an office, you know how to handle certain situations, almost every other situation, because you've gone through it. So. Yeah, you got to roll your sleeves and get out there. It's not as easy as you think. You have to have that. Listen, people are going to get workers' comp. It's just who they're going to get it with.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, at least in Florida.
Yeah, in Florida.
I say that all the time. One of the best assets we have is we're not trying to sell a POS system, leading into, a depression that's around the corner. We won't even go down that path of who's in office and who's causing all of this. But the reality is in Florida, it's a gotta have. You can't get on the job. You can't pull the permit. You can't even go down those steps of even bidding oftentimes without sending in your contractor packet and proving you have this line of insurance. So it's a lot easier when they've got to have it, right? You've established the relationship. You've put a competitive quote. I mean, of course, it's not always about the cheapest, but if your numbers are in line and they like you, it becomes very easily just kind of walking them through it instead of a bunch of UPC, right? I mean, no one likes unpaid consulting, but, it's a much different mountain to climb in Texas. And kudos to
Yes,
you
it is.
to have the success
Thank
that
you.
you've had. And largely, like anything, you're only as good as your carrier or you're only as good as your PEO. Let's pivot a little bit here, right? I mean, there's a lot of PEOs out there. Clearly, Engage is one of the better ones.
For sure.
I don't think that all this success has happened by accident. So tell us a little bit. We've got about 5 minutes here before break.
Yeah.
A little bit about Engage, how they're setting themselves apart from the pack.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say several different ways, but one of them is our service model. Our service model really takes a more of a proactive approach where I think a lot of POs are very reactive. Our response time is, I would say, best in the industry to anybody. I always say we're freaky fast because when I have a client usually will copy me on an escalation issue, and it literally is a minute by the time that my account manager is responding. So response time, our boutique level, proactive level service, and really just it comes from the leadership and the team that we have. Jay Starkman, he's my boss, owner of Engage PEO. He's just amazing. The culture that he has built, but really the people that he hires, I mean, they're just sharp, highly skilled, educated. They know what they're talking about. They have the experience. You can call them, pick up the phone, ask them a question, and they know exactly which way to guide you and what to say. I mean, we're also the only PEO that delivers HR with licensed employment attorneys. So we're not dealing with, PHR, sometimes not even certified account managers that don't have HR certifications. They're kind of just like Googling things up, right? I mean, you're dealing with attorneys, you're dealing with the best in the industry and in their focus area. You're dealing with experts. Not only that, but just the flexibility that we offer. You mentioned right at the beginning of the segment, being able to speak with underwriting and painting that picture of a client or building a business case to get an approval, where I come from a publicly traded PEO where it was a decline and that's it. Like, don't even try. Like, you're not talking to anybody. You're not trying to plead the case. And so really taking that human approach, taking the consultative approach, learning the client, and being able to have good relationships with the underwriters. And our boss allows us to do that. And then being creative. My boss literally allows me to use the PEO lady branding and be creative with what I do. And it makes me happy that I can be creative and do the things that I want and not be put in a box, right? Because you'll hear most top producers don't like to be put in a box.
Sure.
And he literally calls us rock stars. He's like, you guys are my rock stars, and he treats us that way. And it's just a great environment. Overall, probably the happiest I've been in a long time. So
I can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing it with
like
a smile.
literally, it's I'm
sure.
really happy. So
And you literally, you're just hitting these nails on the head. It's amazing. I mean, I say it all the time. We went on this business with speed, right? We're partnering with these agents. They're bringing us one-off risk that for whatever reason, they can't place it in the standard market. And every single time we tell them, give us 30 days. I mean, you get your non-renewal at 60 days. And oftentimes they're talking to other carriers. They're stringing it out. They're doing site visits or whatever. That carrier dwindles them down all the way until that 72-hour mark and finally issues the declination. Whatever the reason is that we're always in that 72-hour fire sale, we've had to embrace that. And speed wins in this business.
that's for sure.
All the time.
And we're fast.
But there's something to be said about being big enough to know that you're stable and clearly engages in 50 states, correct? So
Correct.
a larger PEO, but yet it's still small enough to have that family feel, right, where you can walk down the hall and say, hey, peel the onion. Look at this. Here's why we should take this opportunity. Since the accident, they've implemented X, Y, and Z. Now they're trending the right way. We had one of our larger PEOs public, yes. It took us 3 weeks to get a rate review. Now, this is something typically with most of our PEOs I can call on the phone and get it in real time. So it's almost paralyzing. The too big to fail model is not accurate. It's too big. It does fail.
Yeah, it becomes a transaction at that point, and there's no relationship value there. But I will tell you, I've won a lot of cases because we've been able to turn around deals quickly when they need they need the approval, they need to move forward. So that's definitely speed wins the race. Not all the time, but
it wins. It wins. I feel lucky. 19 years with Southeast Personal Leasing and privately held company, and us having our own TPA, handling our own claims, and having underwriting in the same building, it helps to make sure you can get those proposals and get these underwriting questions answered within 24 and 48 hours and getting it to the agent so we can get the client on board as quickly as possible. So kudos to you and Engage for being quick and getting things done.
Thank you guys.
Absolutely. Well, I am really jazzed up about this next segment after the break. We are going to dispel some of PEO's biggest myths. Stay tuned. All right. We are back. There's so much gabbing going on in between commercials. We missed the red light was on. The producer's in the window. He's flagging us down. Let's go.
Yes.
We're having too much fun in here today. Plenty still to get to. We've got Blanca Abbud, a.k.a. PEO Lady. I just love putting that a.k.a. in front of it. It really, we'll just put the PEO Lady first, right?
Yeah.
You've got a great internet presence. It's really awesome. Thank you again for taking the time to come here. We were kind of chatting right there at commercial talking about PEOs and are they the right fit for every company and really what that looks like. And just the diversity in our two states alone, that becomes a really compelling conversation.
Yep.
So give me your
Exactly.
2 cents on that.
Yeah. So since I'm in Texas and I kind of deal with mostly the clients that I deal with are not with a PEO currently, and so then the decision is, should we go to a PEO? Is that a good decision for our business? Are we at the point where we need a PEO? And a lot of times I hear business owners, because of the lack of knowledge that's out there, oh, we're just not ready, But I've seen a lot of cases where the businesses can really benefit, and I, financial, both business and financially, and still have not been able to go down that path and really make that switch. So, and I deal with that all the time. I mean, just status quo. But PEO is not for every line of business. PEO is not for everybody, and that is my industry, and it's kind of hard for me to say that, right? But it is true, and I'll be the first person to do a proposal and really look at a cost analysis and evaluate a company and say, hey, like, I don't think this is the best way for you to go, and really being honest and really looking out for the best interest of the client and letting them know, I think this would be a better and making recommendations, right? And so PEO is not for everybody, but there's a lot of cases where PEO is the right fit. And that kind of brings us to the myths, right? The myth busters
Sure.
that we should talk about. There's a lot of myths still out there and a lot of misconceptions still out there about PEO that I think deter business owners from making the switch. And so I kind of wanted to debunk some of those.
Well, let's
Yeah.
start.
We-
Let's start.
we-
Let's
well,
jump
we
in
got
there.
plenty of time on that.
Okay,
Hold on. We got plenty of
okay.
time. We got-
Evan's like,
Well, and for anyone listening that isn't familiar with PEO, professional employer organization, right? These are essentially large payroll companies. You're jumping on the PEO's master policy. We come in, we process your payroll. Everybody that gets a paycheck through the service is covered for workers' comp, right? It becomes kind of a pay-as-you-go platform, cost stabilization, audit-free environment. And I think that's big, kind of at the economic turn we're in right now, right? There's, people getting, however it happens, they lowered their payroll to get the cheap premium on the way in or to get the lowest down payment possible to obtain the policy or whatever. They went gangbusters. They hit some really amazing contracts and their payroll doubled or tripled this year. And as awesome as that is, very quickly you can get behind on that.
for sure.
And so it's when we're in the game and we're in the business, we're talking about it a lot, but you don't hear the PNC agent ever say, I know you got nailed on this audit. You may want to think about looking at a PEO because it's a pay-as-you-go platform and they put the correct amount to it each cycle to make sure this doesn't happen next year.
Very good point.
But yeah, there's some tough times ahead. There really is, and not every state's thriving. I'm glad to be in a red state. I know you are as well. Again, different conversation. The political show is Schnitt before us, but
Not the same.
how does again? I always like to hear anyone in the business like we are, kind of their take on that.
Yeah, so I actually just went to the economic development and forecast there in Texas, and Texas is doing really well overall. I think we're hitting a lot of great measures as far as hiring, growth for business, but there is a lot of concerns right now for business owners in regards to inflation and really how to navigate the economic downturn, the supply chain, and a lot of things that are going on, right? So one of the things that they said that really stood out to me is that business owners should evaluate their vendors. This is the year that you really need to dig deep and evaluate your vendors and look at different areas in your business. And that lots of times is going to be your insurance, who you're working with, and really evaluating those relationships that they may not have evaluated in many years. So then you think about how are they going to stay competitive? How are they going to be able to control costs and remain stable in the unstable economic environment that we have, right? And so PEO is really a way to do that. And there's a lot of articles. Even I just saw a carrier put out an article about PEOs and how you should partner with a PEO, especially right now during these economic unstable times, or uncertain, I should say, maybe uncertain times. So it definitely is something, food for thought for business owners that are still, in the game and are going to be long-term players and wanting to stay competitive, wanting to attract, retain, get those top people in the right positions.
Sure.
How do they do that? And those are questions that the business owners are bringing forth to these platforms. And again, most of the time they're not like PEO, but in the economic forecast, these business owners were just expressing concerns of how to navigate through these waters that we're facing. So
Here in Florida, we had the rates drop again for workers' comp. I believe the 9th to 10th time now
Really?
that it's dropped. Okay.
Wow.
And
Historic
so,
lows.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
again, we're happy for the owners, and they're getting a decent rate, but what they're not thinking about is the consequences that could happen later. And so that's why we're trying to get in front of agents and brokers right now as much as possible to let them know so they can understand. Listen, there's only certain options that's going to be available when it gets bad.
Yep.
Okay, so the options are either carriers are going to leave the state of Florida,
Which
at that
several did this year.
time.
Three.
Three
Yeah.
left already, or they're going to do a consent to rate, where they're going to increase the rate of the workers' comp to bring you on board to write your workers' compensation. Well, we're trying to get the message across to these agents, letting them know, listen, partnering up with a PEO is the best option you have right now to make sure you put a proposal in front of them, because if you don't, someone will.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And now you risk not just losing the workers' comp, you risk losing everything else you have with that client,
Yeah.
because a smart agent, why just take the workers' comp? I'll get everything else. Why not shop everything else after I have them on board for 6 months to a year?
Exactly.
So
If they hit the home run on the comp, the very next question is, hey, let me see what else I can do, right? And that's almost that oath that you take as an agent, right? I mean, there's a fiduciary responsibility in there as a
Yes.
licensed 220, but we have to echo that same path in the PEO space. And it's almost like Geico. We're better, and here's why, and we're not, and let me show you where. But even, the rates are down. Same thing with unemployment claims. By adopting the PEO SUTA rate, we had a case just a couple of weeks ago where there was nearly $20,000 in annual savings just on the state unemployment tax rate. And again, the agents they don't get into the state and federal payroll tax conversations ever. And so it's tough. But partnering with the PEO, keeping them out of the state fund, no AORs, no opportunity to lose.
No.
It becomes a quick conversation. It's almost like one Wednesday at a time. We're trying to win that next agent over. And so I always like having that conversation.
For sure.
Especially on the show.
Yeah. I mean, and you said like fiduciary responsibility of the agents, and I don't know how many take that seriously, but if you don't have a PO partner, somebody else will put somebody in front. Then you just mentioned like SUTA, and some people don't even know the cost center and how much cost savings there is available there, but PEO is so complex. It's so hard to explain and understand because it deals with so many facets of a business. That's why most of my friends still really don't know what I do, because they can't understand that really PEO encompasses so many areas of a business. And there's so many different cost centers where you can save money and really build the infrastructure on HR. And so it really is, with everything going on right now, that was like the main highlight of that. It was like, talk to a PEO.
Yeah. Well,
if you haven't.
It's sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. It's far different.
Yeah.
Like, you're climbing Mount Everest every day on every call. Where literally Lionel and I, it's the exact opposite. It is so saturated
really?
here. It's almost like when we're talking to the business owner, we're not the first PEO. We're probably the third or fourth they've heard from this week.
Really?
And so very quickly it thins through the pack where you're winning them over with knowledge, right? They buy if they like or they trust, right? And the competition is weak. And I don't mean that to sound any sort of way, but there's so many that they know someone in this game doing well, and they take all the time to learn payroll and CPA talk, but they never become that true workers' comp specialist, right? And it's very much... Yes, the revenue and the lucrativeness to this business may be the admin, and it piles up, and that's great. But the engine, especially in Florida, the engine that drives this thing is understanding workers' comp. It really is. Well, you're listening to Everything PEO. We've got the PEO lady in here. We've got about 8 minutes left. I told you, it goes so fast.
It really
we could
does.
do this for
I'm
hours.
like, I have so much to talk about still. Like, hold on.
Well, we're going to have to bring you back in a few weeks,
Yes.
whether you can call in or on your next lap through. Don't be shy.
Okay.
But I don't want to miss this segment. There's so many things in here. This is where, although our markets are very different, this is what we both, all of us, everyone in
All
this
the
room
time.
goes through on every deal. Saturated or not, heard of PEOs or not, this is still the biggest myths. And
sure.
when when I saw this, I was like, yes, she gets it.
Yeah, did you? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Well, let's
So-
start.
Okay.
Let's start it off. Myth number one: you will lose control of your business.
How do you combat that?
You won't.
Simple, right?
We
You
tell them
won't.
all the time.
Yeah.
It won't happen. You still will have control of your business. Now, what I do advise when that comes up, right? I let them know, hey, we're not gonna let you do something that is completely out of compliance. Where yes, at that point we will take control and we'll say you can't do that.
Sure.
Legally, you can't do that. So is that losing control, or is that having an actual business partner that has your best interest in mind? So
It's almost like keeping it in control.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Oh gosh, yeah. I
Somebody's
like the way
gotta
you turn.
steer the
Somebody
ship.
has to keep this in control because you're not. So
If
that's
they
the only
roll-
thing I will say.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I
Yeah.
mean, I think if they rolled out of a third-party payroll provider and none of that verbiage was in there about the right to hire and fire, I mean, obviously it's in there for breach scenarios, or we'll go down, someone gets injured, they fail
All
their
kinds of stuff,
you're in
sexual
and out, there has
harassment.
to be those moments. So we're helping you keep in control. I love that one.
Yes.
How about next? I have to, like
go
this
ahead.
one too. I have to let go of my HR manager or payroll.
No, you don't.
Right? Someone still has to report
have
the
to
hours.
report the
Someone has to
hours.
get
Not true.
Yeah. In fact, we need you. Co-employment. It's the headliner for a reason, right?
Employer relationship.
Yeah, I think if people really started looking at the HR role in a more in a growth role, as more recruitment, more culture building, or revenue generating activities versus I'm just now going to spend 3 days on payroll, and so really looking at that department in your company that can really help grow the company versus like this is just a now cost related money sucking.
We're freeing
thing.
up some time.
Yeah,
Now you can do
definitely.
account receivables,
Yep.
marketing, right?
You can do so much more.
Someone's still got to steer the ship, and,
Yep.
and you've got to really hit home on that. What about I'll lose my status as a small business?
So that's a good one because that's even hard to explain, right? Because we go in there and we're like, hey, you're now going to be quoted as a larger group. And so that myth kind of is like, well, wait a minute. Now I'm not going to be a small business. But it is a complete pass-through for the business itself. But in regards to the areas that we manage, payroll, tax administration, workers' comp, you're viewed as the PEO, and we actually file under our EIN. But in regards to business taxes, the business operations, your actual amount of employees that you have, it's a complete pass through. So there's nothing that changes there. So you're still a small business. If you're under 50 employees, you're not going to be a large business.
Well, I saw one of your videos the other day. It's
What?
again, it's almost like you're a small business, but now you have access to Fortune 500 benefits.
Yeah.
Now you're at the big boy table and getting
Yeah.
all the goodies the larger businesses are getting, right?
Right.
And so you've got to almost embrace the change or lack thereof, right? I mean,
Yeah.
oftentimes you have a comp policy and you have a third-party payroll provider. We're taking those two services, we're putting it under one roof at a discount, right? This is a real simple value proposition. If by outsourcing to a PEO, I can reduce my cost and headache, is it worth it to us? Keep it simple.
For sure.
Let's go to the next one. My employees won't embrace the change.
Oh, okay. So I'll give today as an example.
Love it.
I did a orientation open enrollment meeting to a company that has been in business since 1987. Never had benefits before, and the employees were so happy, guys. Like, oh my gosh,
Cartwheels.
they were so happy. They were just asking all these questions, and they were just so excited to enroll. They're like, okay, when can we register? I mean, I think they embraced it more than the owners. They were just thrilled about all the benefits that they were going to have and the support and really painting that picture of like, hey, this business is doing well, your company is doing well, and this is what they did now to enhance what you guys already have and to get you guys, for 2023 on a great path. So employees love it, guys. So that is a complete myth.
I don't even understand the argument. I mean,
I know, right?
if the business is above board,
Yeah.
right? Who's doing your payroll now? My CPA, myself, whomever, right? The only
My
thing this feels
daughter.
like to them is someone
Yeah,
else is cutting the
totally.
check, right? Of course, all the benefits that may come with it, but just someone else cutting the check. Keep it simple, business owners.
When I started
keep
in
it
this
simple.
industry and you had the employees asking a ton of questions, I said, listen, I'm providing your employer a service, discounting their workers' comp. What you should do in a couple months is ask for a raise because I'm saving them that much money.
Oh, okay. There you
So
go.
I used to use that line years ago when I came in because that's what we do. With benefits, we're handling the 940s, the 941s, the W-2s. We're printing the checks, direct deposit. All they do is concentrate on business and keeping you busy so you could get a check every week.
All right, we've got time for about one more here. I will lose the power to decide who gets hired and fired.
And that's false. Not true.
Yeah. Again, the verbiage may be in some of those packets, and I get it. There's a moment where someone breaches. Maybe it's your brother, right? And, oh my God, it's my best helper. I can't lose them. But if it's negligent and they're actually in harm's way of other employees, but you can't make that decision, right, because you're too emotionally attached. This is a big one, right? We help keep you in control. Well, we've only got about a minute left. It's been awesome. I really, really want to do it again. I hope we can get you soon.
For sure. This has been so much fun.
Thanks
I hope
for our callers.
Educated everybody about PEO today.
That's our goal. We hope everybody comes out of the show a little smarter and brighter about the PEO space, and that's all we can ever really ask for.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Awesome. Well, next week, we got Kurt from IOA, 20 years in the space, really going to come to understand the value of a PEO. Man, Lionel, that was awesome.
That was fast.
Thanks, Blanca.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you flying over here from Texas.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
2 weeks in a row. New York, Texas. We got people buzzing all over the place for the show. It's really been a pleasure. We thank you so much. Everyone knows how this goes. Thank God. Appreciate your PEO. Be kind to your staff. And know that we're just on a 167-hour break.